Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to imagine losing absolutely everything.
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, your home, your family, your sense of security, just gone.
Yeah.
And you are stranded in a foreign land.
Right.
And the only thing, the absolute only thing keeping you from just completely going under is a single, totally unexpected relationship.
It's a heavy place to start.
It is, but that is the architecture of loss we're looking at today in this deep dive. We've got this fascinating source document in front of us. It's a bilingual Hebrew-English text of an ancient narrative, the Book of Ruth, chapters 1 through 4.
Yeah, and it's a text that is just so rich with cultural history. But, more importantly, it serves as this incredible psychological and emotional case study.
Totally.
What makes this so compelling is how it tracks a journey. Like, we're going to look at a geographical journey from the fields of Moab back to Bethlehem, but really it is primarily an emotional journey.
Right.
We are basically watching two women move from profound, devastating isolation into the very heart of a vibrant new community.
Exactly. So our mission today is to explore the profound meaning of commitment and loyalty, specifically through the relationship between these two women, Ruth and Naomi.
Which is just a fascinating dynamic.
It really is. And we'll unpack it by looking at the crushing hardship they face, their active struggle to overcome it, and then, the ultimate blessing that follows. So let's look at how this begins. The text sets the scene pretty energetically right in chapter 1.
Yeah, it doesn't waste any time.
No, it starts right in the days when the judges judged, and there's this severe famine in the land of Judah.
Yeah.
So a man named Elimelech takes his wife Naomi and their two sons, and they just leave Bethlehem to try and survive in the country of Moab.
And then the text hits us with this rabid, almost brutal cascade of loss. I mean, first, Elimelech dies.
Right.
So Naomi is left as a widow in a foreign land with her two sons, and those sons, they eventually marry Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth.
Okay.
And they live there for about 10 years, but then tragedy strikes again. Both of the sons die. So Naomi is left entirely, completely alone.
Which, I mean, to a modern listener, losing your entire family is just emotionally devastating, obviously.
Yeah.
But in the ancient Near East, what does this actually mean for Naomi practically, like day to day?
It means absolute destitution.
Wow.
Yeah, because in this patriarchal society, a woman's legal standing, her physical protection, and, her economic survival, it was all tied entirely to the men in her family. So her father, her husband, or her sons.
And she has none of those left.
Exactly. Without them, she has no property rights. She has no income, no social safety net. She is quite literally staring at starvation.
So she decides to go back to Bethlehem because she hears the famine is finally over. And when she arrives, the women of the city are just shocked. They see her and ask, "Is this Naomi?" And her response is just incredibly dark.
It really is.
She tells them, "Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me."
And there is a really fascinating linguistic feature here in the Hebrew text.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the name Naomi, it means pleasant, but Mara means bitter. So she is literally demanding to be renamed bitter. The Hebrew text directly embeds her trauma into her very identity.
That is so intense.
It is. And she goes on to say, "I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me back home empty." She feels entirely hollowed out, She's internalizing her loss to the point where she views herself as being actively cursed by God.
It makes me think about how grief can act like a physical barrier. Like when someone goes through a terrible breakup or just profound trauma, they often put up these massive walls.
Right, to protect themselves.
Exactly.
Yep.
They isolate themselves intentionally, maybe to avoid more pain, or just because they feel like they are a burden to everyone else. And we see this exact psychological response on the road well before they even get to Bethlehem.
Yeah, she tries to push them away.
She really does. Naomi begs her daughters-in-law to turn back. She basically tells them she's a dead end.
Because she is acting out of a place of total despair. In verse 1.13, she says, "It grieveth me much for your sakes, for the hand of the Lord is gone forth against me."
Wow. Against me.
Yeah, she views herself as an actual hazard to these young women. She argues that she's way too old to have another husband and, provide them with new sons to marry. So she's trying to protect Orpah and Ruth from the collateral damage of her ruined life.
Right. And Orpah, she eventually makes the logical choice. She cries, kisses Naomi goodbye, and goes back to her people. But Ruth stays. The text says she cleaves unto her.
Yes.
And this leads to that famous declaration, "Entreat me not to leave thee, for whither thou goest, I will go. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God.
What's really fascinating here is the true nature of Ruth's loyalty.
How so?
Well, if we look closely at the historical context, this isn't just a polite gesture to a grieving mother-in-law. It is a radical, life-altering commitment.
Yeah, I guess she's giving up a lot.
She's giving up her homeland, her family, her safety, and she's going to a place where she will be a complete foreigner, an absolute outsider. She's from Moab, which is a nation that had a historically hostile relationship with Israel.
Oh, right.
So she is guaranteed to face immense prejudice.
But wait, let me push back on that for a second. Because Naomi literally just said she has zero hope and zero future. She said she's empty. Why on earth would Ruth double down on a sinking ship?
It seems crazy, right?
Yeah, she's binding herself to someone who is actively trying to push her away and has absolutely nothing to offer. To a modern listener, this just seems incredibly reckless, maybe even self-destructive.
And that raises such an important question. It's the crux of what makes the story so powerful, really, because the text is actively redefining loyalty for us here.
Redefining it how?
Well, loyalty here isn't an alliance of convenience. It's not a transaction where Ruth expects, something in return later on.
Right, because there's nothing to get.
Exactly. Instead, it's the steadfast emotional tether, precisely because the other person is completely emotionally isolated.
Yeah.
Naomi is drowning in her own bitterness, right?
Yeah.
And Ruth recognizes that if she leaves, Naomi is truly, utterly alone. So Ruth's loyalty is an act of sheer grace. She's choosing to step into someone else's void.
She refuses to let Naomi be isolated.
That's really beautiful. It really is.
So they arrive in Bethlehem, and it's right at the beginning of the barley harvest.
Yeah.
And Ruth doesn't just, sit around waiting for a miracle to happen.
No, she gets to work.
She takes immediate initiative. She tells Naomi she's going to go find food, specifically to glean ears of corn. Let's decode that term for a second. What exactly is gleaning?
So gleaning was an ancient mandated welfare system.
Okay.
Israelite law actually required landowners not to harvest the very corners of their fields. And if they dropped a sheaf of grain, they weren't allowed to go back and pick it up.
Really? They just had to leave it?
Yep, they had to leave it for the poor, the widow, and the foreigner. It was a way for the destitute to work for their survival with dignity. But we have to remember, it was also incredibly dangerous work, especially for a foreign widow like Ruth.
Why dangerous?
Because she would be entirely at the mercy of the field workers. She'd be highly vulnerable to harassment or, assault.
Right, she has no protection.
Yeah.
But the text notes that her luck, or providence, leads her to land in the portion of the field that belongs to Boaz, who happens to be a wealthy relative of Elimelech.
Right.
And when Boaz arrives and figures out who she is, he steps in. But it's the way he helps that really stands out to me.
Oh, absolutely.
It's highly practical.
Yeah.
He doesn't just offer thoughts and prayers. He provides immediate systemic support. He tells her not to go to any other field, but to stay fast by his maidens.
He essentially creates a comprehensive safety net for her.
Yeah.
He commands the young men not to touch her, providing physical protection in a space where she previously had none. He gives her access to their drawn drinking water. And at mealtime, he even invites her to eat with them, giving her parched corn until she is completely satisfied.
He even goes a step further. He tells his workers to intentionally pull out some of the grain from the bundles on purpose and just leave it on the ground for her to glean without rebuking her.
Which is amazing.
It is. It's almost like he's quietly rigging the system in her favor so she can keep her dignity while taking home this massive haul.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Boaz's practical actions are actually the catalyst for the narrative's major emotional shift.
How so?
Well, Boaz praises Ruth, acknowledging all she has done for her mother-in-law. But the real turning point is when Ruth goes home. She brings back an entire ephah of barley.
Let's quantify that for a second. An ephah is a massive amount of grain. It's roughly enough to feed the two of them for weeks.
Exactly. And look at Naomi's reaction. When Ruth tells her Boaz's name, Naomi's entire disposition shifts.
The woman who just renamed herself bitter.
Yes. She suddenly changes her tune. In verse 2.20, Naomi says, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead." This is the moment Naomi's emotional isolation breaks.
Wow.
She suddenly sees a future. She realizes they have a near kinsman, a potential redeemer. Boaz's practical generosity breathes love back into Naomi. She stops waiting to die and, she starts planning.
And her plan is incredibly risky. Here's where it gets really interesting. Naomi instructs Ruth to wash, put on her best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor at night while Boaz is winnowing barley.
Right.
She tells Ruth to wait until Boaz lies down to sleep, go in softly, uncover his feet, and lie down.
I mean, I have to ask, what is the cultural mechanism happening here? Because to a modern listener, sneaking onto a threshing floor in the middle of the night and uncovering a guy's feet sounds bizarre and maybe a little scandalous.
Oh, it is highly scandalous.
Normalized, so it's not just me.
Not at all. A threshing floor was an open-air area where grain was separated from the stalk, and during harvest time, landowners would sleep out there to guard their crops from thieves.
Makes sense.
It was a very male-dominated space, often associated with feasting and celebration. So for a vulnerable foreign widow to sneak in there at night, it is a profound leap of faith.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
If she is discovered by the wrong person, she risks being branded a prostitute. And that carried severe legal and social penalties, potentially even death. So why the feet, specifically? Is this a symbolic gesture?
It is. Uncovering his feet and lying down is a position of submission, yes, but it's also a deeply symbolic, culturally understood petition for protection and marriage.
Oh, okay.
She is essentially asking him to spread his cloak over her, which in the ancient Near East was a well-known metaphor for taking someone under your legal and physical protection.
So Boaz wakes up startled at midnight, and there's a woman lying at his feet. He asks, "Who art thou?" And Ruth answers, "I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman."
Right.
So she's making a direct, bold, legal, and marital proposition right there.
And Boaz's reaction is deeply revealing. He doesn't panic and he doesn't take advantage of her vulnerability. Instead, he actually praises her.
Really?
Yeah, he says she has shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning because she didn't go after younger men, rich or poor. He recognizes that her request isn't driven by romance or personal ambition. It's an extension of her unyielding loyalty to Naomi and a desperate bid to preserve her deceased husband's lineage.
So he promises to do all she asks, and he notes that the whole city knows she is a virtuous woman. But there is a legal complication.
There's always a catch.
Always. He tells her there's actually a kinsman nearer than he is. Someone else has the first right of refusal. So he sends her back to Naomi in the morning with 6 measures of barley, so she doesn't go back empty-handed.
And this brings us to the final hurdle in chapter 4. Boaz goes up to the city gate, which, is where all legal and public business is handled in the ancient world.
Like a courthouse.
Exactly. It's the equivalent of a courthouse and a city council wrapped into one. He sits down, spots the closer kinsman walking by, and gathers 10 elders of the city to sit as witnesses.
What follows is just a masterclass in ancient legal maneuvering. Boaz lays out the situation. He tells the near kinsman that Naomi is selling the parcel of land that belonged to Elimelech and asks if he wants to redeem it. Let's clarify this redeemer concept. What does it actually mean to be a redeemer in this context?
So, in ancient Israelite law, if a man died and left a widow without a son, his brother or nearest male relative had a duty to marry the widow and buy back the family land.
Yeah.
This was called a levirate marriage. The goal was to produce an heir who would carry on the deceased man's name and inherit his land so the family line wouldn't be wiped out. The redeemer was the person stepping in to basically rescue the family's legacy.
So when Boaz first brings up the land, the near kinsman says, "Yes, I will redeem it." He clearly sees it as a great real estate deal.
Right, he's just thinking about the land.
But then Boaz introduces what is essentially a corporate poison pill. He says, "By the way, the day you buy the field, you also have to acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance."
And that changes the equation entirely for him.
Oh, big time.
If the near kinsman marries Ruth and they have a son, that son will inherit Elimelech's land, not the kinsman's existing children. So he would be spending his own money to buy land that would eventually just go to another family line.
You'd be taking a huge loss.
Exactly. He tells Boaz, "I cannot redeem it lest I mar my own inheritance." So he backs out and tells Boaz to take the right of redemption.
And how do they finalize this legal transfer? This is honestly one of my favorite details in the entire text.
The shoe.
Yes, there's no paperwork. The text explains that it was the custom in former times in Israel that to finalize a redemption or an exchange, a man draws off his shoe and gives it to his neighbor.
Wait, hold on. A signed contract with footwear. Like, how does handing over a sandal equate to a property transfer?
It definitely seems quirky to us today,
Yeah.
but it was a highly visible public attestation. Taking off the sandal, it symbolized transferring the right to walk on and claim that specific piece of land.
Oh, literally walking on it. That makes sense.
Right. By handing it to Boaz, the near kinsman is publicly waiving his right to step foot on Elimelech's property as its owner. It cements the legality and the finality of the transaction in a way everyone in the community understands. So Boaz then declares to the elders and all the people that he has bought all that was Elimelech's and acquired Ruth to be his wife to raise up the name of the dead. And all the people at the gate act as witnesses.
They do.
They bless Ruth, asking the Lord to make her like Rachel and Leah, who built the house of Israel. And this leads to the ultimate restoration.
Yeah.
Boaz marries Ruth, and they have a son, Obed.
But notice where the text focuses its camera at the very end. The narrative synthesis of this entire arc, it centers entirely on Naomi.
That's true.
The woman we met in chapter 1, who is utterly empty and broken, now takes this newborn child, lays it in her bosom, and becomes his nurse. The narrative completes its emotional journey.
And the community's view of her is completely transformed.
Mm-hmm.
The women of the city, who earlier asked, "Is this Naomi?"
Mm-hmm.
in shock, they now come to her and say, "Blessed be the Lord, who hath not left thee this day without a near kinsman." They say this child will be a restorer of her life and a nourisher in her old age.
Yeah.
And then they say something incredible about Ruth. They say her daughter-in-law, who loves her, is better to thee than 7 sons.
Which is huge, because in the ancient Near Eastern context, having 7 sons was the absolute pinnacle of blessing, security, and wealth.
Oh,
So for the community to declare that a foreign, once destitute daughter-in-law is better than 7 sons, it is a profound testament to the power of Ruth's radical loyalty. She single-handedly changed the trajectory of Naomi's life.
and it changes the trajectory of history. The text wraps up the narrative facts by revealing an incredible historical payoff. Obed becomes the father of Jesse, who is the father of David.
Right.
This cements these 2 women, one a bitter widow and the other a vulnerable foreigner, directly into the legendary royal lineage of King David.
It is a masterful conclusion. The narrative moves from a famine in Judah and an unmarked grave in Moab, all the way to the establishment of the most significant royal dynasty in biblical history. And it all hinged on the quiet, steadfast loyalty between 2 women.
So, what does this all mean for you, listening right now? When we look at this deep dive, we see that true loyalty isn't just about sharing the good times. It isn't just an alliance of convenience.
No, it's not.
It is about stepping into someone's emotional isolation when they have absolutely nothing to offer in return. It's about refusing to let them push you away when they are at their most bitter and walking with them step by step until the harvest comes.
I would leave you with one final thought to mull over. Consider the title of this book. The entire story is largely driven by Naomi's tragedy. Her loss initiates the journey,
Right.
and the ultimate physical redemption of the land and the lineage that is financed by Boaz's wealth and his legal maneuvering at the city gate.
Yeah, he makes it happen practically.
Exactly. Yet this text is not named after Naomi, and it is not named after Boaz. It is named after Ruth, the vulnerable outsider whose only true power was her unwavering choice to stay. It makes you wonder, in our own lives, do we underestimate the sheer transformative power of simply choosing to show up for someone?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we will catch you next time.